Good day, Grade 8 learners. Your teacher is back on track to help you learn the lessons in Mathematics A. I am Teacher Michelle Niere of Tambungan National High School, Pantukan South District, and I will be your guide in enhancing your minds in facing challenges in Grade 8 Mathematics. Please do prepare your papers and pens, listen and understand carefully, and let us have a wonderful day of learning how to prove congruence of triangles. At the end of our session, you will be able to, number 1, define the 4-triangle congruence. Number 2, make use of the properties of congruence and equality, postulates and definition of undefined terms when proving. And 3rd, present statements in the form of 2-column proof containing statements and reasons when proving. Before we prove congruence of triangles, let us first learn the idea of congruence. Congruence means two geometric figures with exactly the same size and shape. For example, in the figure, triangle ABC and triangle PQR are congruent triangles. Two triangles are said to be congruent if pairs of corresponding sides and corresponding angles are congruent. How far do we need to know in order to prove that these two triangles are congruent? Before we do that, let us first identify the parts of a triangle in terms of their relative positions. We have first the included angle. Included angle is defined as the angle between two sides of a triangle. Again, included angle is defined as the angle between two sides of a triangle, while the included side is defined as the side common to two angles of a triangle. Again, included side is the side common to two sides of a triangle. We will consider the triangle in the figure. We have triangle DEF. Again, the triangle in the figure is triangle DEF. In order for us to identify clearly the parts of a triangle in terms of their relative positions, I want you to observe closely the part or each part of the triangle that we will be mentioning. Let us have first angle D. Observe, angle D is an included angle of side DF and side DE. Again, angle D is an included angle of side DF and side DE. Second, Angle E is an included angle of side ED and side EF. Angle E is an included angle of side ED and side EF. While angle F is an included angle of side FD and side FE. How about its three sides? We have side DE. Side DE is an included side of angle D and angle E. Side DE again is an included side of side D and side E. Side EF is an included side of angle E and angle F. Again, take note that side EF is an included side of angle E and angle F. And the last side, which is side DF, is an included side of angle D and angle F. Again, side DF is an included side of angle D and angle F. However, you don't need to show all these 6 to prove that the two triangles are congruent. The use of these 4 congruence postulates, will learn how to prove that two triangles are congruent. The first congruence postulate is known as SSS, or side-side-side congruence postulate. This certain postulate says if the 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to the 3 sides of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. Let me emphasize again SSS, or side-side-side congruence postulate. It states that if the 3 sides of one triangle are congruent or equal to the 3 sides of another triangle, then the triangles are obviously congruent. In the figure, we have 2 triangles, triangle ABC and triangle DEF. The figure shows that the side of triangle ABC, which is AB, is congruent to the other side of the triangle DEF, which is the side DE, and side BC is also congruent to side EF, and AC is congruent to side DF. Therefore, the 3 sides of the given triangles are congruent. We can now say that the 2 triangles, triangle ABC and triangle DEF, are congruent triangles. That is according to SSS, or side-side-side congruence postulate. The second congruence postulate is known as SAS, or side-angle-side congruence postulate. The SAS, or the side-angle-side congruence postulate, is defined as if 2 sides and an included angle of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding 2 sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. Again, the SAS, which stands for side-angle-side congruence postulate, is defined as if the two sides and an included angle of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two sides and the included angle of one triangle, then the triangles are congruent. In the figure, we have again triangle ABC and triangle DEF. Observe, angle A is an included angle of side AB and side AC for triangle ABC. And as to the other triangle, angle D is an included angle of side DE and side DF. Notice also that in the figure, or the figure shows that side AB and side DE are congruent, and the included angles A and D are also congruent, and the other side AC and side DF are also congruent. Therefore, we have the side, the included angle, and another side to be congruent. We can say that the triangles ABC and DEF are congruent triangles since the two sides and an included angle of triangle ABC are congruent also to the corresponding two sides and the included angle of triangle DEF. That is our second congruence postulate, known as the side-angle-side congruence postulate. Before we will proceed to our third congruence postulate, let us have first our short break.
The Radyo Z-eskwela program of the Division of Davao de Oro is being brought to you by Nueda Builders Construction and Supply Incorporated, Maverick Builders Incorporated, Mitch Construction and Supply, Archicons Architectural Construction and Supply, DB Construction and Supply, Hanaway Builders Corporation, Phoenix 𝗠𝗶𝗇𝗺𝗵𝗵𝗹𝗶 Gasoline Station, Master Construction and Supplies, Mackenzie Builders, GP&H Construction Incorporated, Metro Gear Construction Corporation, NEN Builders and Development Services Corporation, Max Mays Enterprises Incorporated, We Inc. Construction Company, Rangay Construction and Supply, East Sussex Enterprise, WM Construction, Councilor Boogie and Miss Marjorie Vertodazo, Icon Builders and Supply, and Apex Mining Company Incorporated.
We are back to the second part of our presentation this afternoon. We'll now have the third congruence postulate of the four congruence postulates. The third one is ASA congruence postulate, known as, or ASA stands for angle, side, angle, congruence postulate. This congruence postulate is defined by the statement if the two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two angles and an included side of one triangle, then the triangles are congruent. So what are involved here are the two angles and the included side of one triangle and the other triangle. Again, in ASA, two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two angles and an included side of one triangle for us to say that the two triangles are congruent. It is also observed that both of the included sides of the two triangles are congruent. And apart from that observation, we also have angle A congruent to angle D and angle B congruent to angle E. The two angles in the included side of triangle ABC are congruent to the corresponding two angles and an included side of triangle DEF. Then, we can say that triangle ABC and triangle DEF are congruent triangles based on ASA congruence postulate. In the figure, we have triangle ABC and triangle DEF. For the first triangle, side AB is an included side of angles A and B. And as to the other triangle, side DE is the included side of angle D and angle E. This time, let's have the fourth and last congruence postulate. It is known as AAS congruence postulate. This postulate states that if two angles and a non-included side of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two angles and a non-included side of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. Again, let me say it again. If two angles and a non-included side of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two angles and a non-included side of one triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. What are involved here are the two angles and a non-included side of both triangles. In the figure, we have triangle ABC with an angle bisector of side BD dividing angle B into two equal parts. So, forming into two new triangles, we have triangle ABD and triangle DBC. In this figure, we have angle ABD congruent to angle DBC and another angle A congruent to angle C. Of the two angles of each triangle, we have the non-included side, which is side BD for angle ABD and also side BD for angle DBC. So by the reflexive property, the side is congruent by itself. We can now say that these two triangles ABD and triangle DBC are congruent triangles according to angle side congruence postulate. Now that you have just learned this four triangle congruence postulate, let us have an activity. This activity also requires us to use some properties of congruence and equality, axioms and postulates, which you have learned on our previous lesson. The direction of our activity says, examine the figure carefully. Name the postulate used and what property of congruence, axioms, postulates are used on the following items. Again, examine the figure carefully. Name the postulate used and what property of congruence, actions, postulates are used on the following items. In the figure, we have side common to both triangles. By using reflexive property, we can say that this side common to both triangles is equal by itself. The figure also says that an included angle of one triangle is congruent to the included angle of another triangle, and the two sides of one triangle and the two sides of another triangle, making the two angles included from each triangle are congruent. We can now say that the answer for item number 1, proving the two triangles are congruent, is the SAS or side angle side congruence postulate. This is now the second figure of our first activity. The figure is similar to a kite formed by two adjacent triangles. Observe that side CA is common to both triangles. By the reflexive property, the side is equal by itself. And we also have side CB congruent to side CD, and side AB is congruent to side AD. The three sides of the two triangles are congruent. Therefore, we can say that the two triangles are congruent, having SSS congruence postulate or side-side-side congruence postulate, which says that the three corresponding sides of one triangle are congruent to the three corresponding sides of another triangle. We will now proceed to our third figure. We have triangle CBE and triangle AED. In the figure, we observe that the two triangles have common vertex, and that vertex is the vertex E. First observation, we have angle CEB and angle AED to be vertical angles. So we can say that angle CEB and angle AED are congruent angles according to vertical angle theorem. Remember that vertical angle theorem says vertical angles are congruent. Another observation we can get from the given figure is we have angle A congruent to angle B, side AE congruent to side EB. We can say that triangle AED and triangle CBE are congruent triangles according to angle side angle congruence postulate, which says again that if two angles and an included side of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding two angles and an included side of one triangle, the two triangles are congruent. And we are done with our three figures, which serve as the figures of our first activity. I say good job, students. Now that you understand the triangle congruence postulates and apply the properties of congruence and equality, I am sure that you are now ready to prove congruence of two triangles to the next level. Let us find out how we can apply the congruence postulate to prove that the two triangles are congruent. Now let us consider this figure. We have triangle ABC and triangle CDE. The two triangles have common vertex, and that vertex is the vertex C. From the given illustration, we have two identified given. We have side BC congruent to side DC, and we also have side AB congruent to side DE. Now, we will prove that triangle BCA and triangle DCE is congruent. In proving the statement triangle BCA is congruent to triangle DCE, we will present the statements into two-column proof. The two-column proof contains statements and reason. We will write the statements in the first column, while the reasons will be written in the second column. This time, let's have the following statements. We have side BC congruent to side DC, that is according to our given. We also have side AC congruent to side CE, again that is according to our given. We can also say that angle BCA is congruent to angle DCE, that is based on vertical angles theorem, which says that vertical angles are congruent. Now the last statement is triangle BCA is congruent to triangle DCE according to side angle side postulate or side angle side congruence postulate. Remember that side angle side postulate says that if two sides of one triangle and its included angle are congruent to the corresponding two sides and the included angle of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. We now prove that triangle BCA is congruent to triangle DCE. We now prove that triangle BCA is congruent to triangle DCE. This ends the second part of our discussion this afternoon. We will be right back after our short break.
The Radyo Z-eskwela program of the Division of Davao de Oro is being brought to you by 𝗦𝗵 Construction and Supply Incorporated, Maverick Builders Incorporated, Mitch Construction and Supply, Archicons Architectural Construction and Supply, DB Construction and Supply, Hanaway Builders Corporation, 𝗡𝗶𝗲𝗿𝗲 Gasoline Station, Master Construction and Supplies, Mackenzie Builders, GP&H Construction Incorporated, Metro Gear Construction Corporation, NEN Builders and Development Services Corporation, Max Mays Enterprises Incorporated, We Inc. Construction Company, Rangay Construction and Supply, East Sussex Enterprise, WM Construction, Councilor Boogie and Miss Marjorie Vertodazo, Icon Builders and Supply, and Apex Mining Company Incorporated.
Welcome back to the third and last part of our presentation this afternoon. After our discussion, along with its series of illustrations, we can now have these following generalizations. Number 1. There are 4 triangle congruence postulates that can be used when proving. One is as or side angle side congruence postulate. Second, ASA or angle side angle congruence postulate. Third, SSS or side side congruence postulate. And the last one is AAS or angle side congruence postulate. Please remember that there are no side congruence postulate and AAA congruence postulate or angle congruence postulate. Since these postulates may appear similar but not necessarily congruent. Second generalization. Make use of the properties of congruence and equality, postulates and definition of undefined terms if possible when proving. Again, we can make use of the properties of congruence and equality, postulates and definition of undefined terms if possible when proving. And lastly, when proving, you can present your statements in the form of 2-column proof containing statements and reasons, or whatever method of proving you will use based on your preference. One of the most frequently asked questions is, how can we correctly write our proofs? The answer is, you can choose any method in writing proofs either in paragraph form or chart or 2-column form. Moreover, to create a good proof, you have to use your knowledge and understanding on different definitions of undefined terms, properties of equality and congruence, postulates and theorem to perform proving congruent triangles. Please prepare your papers and pens and let's begin answering our last activity. I want you to listen for the direction carefully. Given the statements, prove that the triangles shown are congruent. Use the 2-column proof to prove these statements. You have to find out how can you apply the congruence postulates to prove that the triangles are congruent. I want you to write all your answers on your paper. Have your paper be submitted to your subject area in your respective schools. And this ends our discussion for this afternoon. At this point, I say, great job, little mathematicians. For sure, you are now totally equipped with the skills in proving triangle congruence. Once again, I am Teacher Michelle and see you on our next lesson. Stay safe everyone and bye for now.
Z-eskwela Executive and Technical Working Committee. The school's Division Superintendent, 𝗏𝗶𝗇𝗵𝗵𝗹𝗶 5. Assistant Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. 𝗏𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗹𝗹. Curriculum Implementation Division OIC Chief, Dr. Arlene B. Lim. School Governance and Operations Division, Dr. Ruben J. Riponte. Program Director, Dr. Arlene B. Lim. Assistant Program Director, 𝗦𝗵𝗵𝗶 Canales. Members, Cecilia Morales, Dr. Hilda A. Opeña, Dr. Eldecris B. Calzadora, Dr. Dexter A. Siquinia, Nohara O. Pinute, Dr. Grace D. Pontillas, Dr. Renato M. Pacpacin, Dr. Andy P. Cabodok, Juanito Lapiceros, Engineer Norberto S. Manlangit, Ryan Villanueva, Jomar M. Dumupoy, Bob Daylan S. Milabat, Medard D. Apit, and Paz Eugenia Villusino. Technical Working Committee, Production and Communications, Lorely E. Quijano, Given G. Hinampas, Judiland T. Yu, Donna D. T. Bolivar, Mary Rose N. Resma, Riwen C. Manuel, Irene Lea C. Manguhon, and Bessie Aya N. Banyes. Social Media and Packaging Team, Christian Anhara L. Martesio, William R. Ranara, Joan T. Iscoton, Roberto S. Acusar Jr., May B. Istaniol, Richard H. Arellano, Ralph A. Tabanyag, Angelo C. Gutierrez Jr., Jade Karen R. Arais, Eliza May Garsuta, Sedi S. Caballero, and Jane S. Caballero. Sa Radyo Z-eskwela, siguradong masaya. Right and only here at Z Radio 88.5, ang istasyong siguradong lingaw, siguradong kuyaw.